Hello. Today I'm going to do a review over the CZ SP01 Tactical. This is basically just a CZ75 chambered 9mm. Alright, so here we've got the box. So just pull these two little tabs up and push in the middle and pop it open. Alright, so here we've got the pistol. It comes with two 19 round magazines. I've got lock grips on it, so I'll be talking through it with with those grips on there as opposed to the stock ones that are right here. And you'll also notice for the eagle-eyed viewers out there that these grips are actually for a shadow, so there's a slightly different cutout here because I figure someday I might buy a shadow instead of this thing. So if I do, I'll just drop those in. But overall, those grips work just fine in terms of how it feels. It just looks a little weird in this region. So anyways, just have the pistol right here. First thing I'm going to do is just safety check it real quick. So pull the slide back, magazine out, and whatnot. Alright, so first thing is I'm just going to go over a few quick modifications that I've done to this pistol. So those will probably look a bit different than when you first see this in the gun store or pick it up in person or whatever. First thing is the barrel's shiny, so I've actually polished that down. I used some aluminum mag polish for that, and basically just took all the finish off in a few regions. But I kept the finish on the lugs just because I didn't want to mess with those tolerances at all. So I just took it off the end of the barrel here, and then also on the upper region of the barrel as well. So I think it gives it a real interesting, maybe Cold War-esque type look. Another thing is I changed out the fiber optic front post for a green one. Initially it was red, but that broke over time, and I just bought some additional rods and then just put that one in there and heated up both sides of it to keep it in place. And I think besides it, that's pretty much stock. For the magazine, I'm working on polishing it to where it's also has like a mirror finish. And one thing I'll say about that is I was afraid that it was going to rust over time, but I've been real fortunate with just using a little bit of gun oil. So I use Rem oil on this gun. And as long as I keep these surfaces coated, I haven't noticed any rust at all. So if you do consider doing that in the future, then just, I think, keep those surfaces coated and you should be absolutely fine. All right, so with that out of the way, I'll talk about the gun from the impressions of having this stuff on it. But if you have any questions in terms of the original grips and whatnot, just feel free to ask questions down below in the comments, and I'll be more than happy to get to you. All right, so my initial impressions just holding this gun or handing it to somebody is they're typically like, holy shit, this thing's really heavy. So it's got those brass grips on the side, and the gun out of the box is already about 40 ounces. I can't remember how much weight they add, but I'm going to guess this thing's around 45 ounces or so. We can actually check that later on, but anyways, yeah, I'd say it's probably around 45 ounces leading up into 50, so it's not light by any means. Having a steel frame makes this thing quite chunky, but the balance is absolutely phenomenal in terms of how the gun sits in your hand. It doesn't feel like it's really front heavy at all or anything like that. And also the overall contour of the grips is really great as well. So there's a bit of a palm swell that's built into these particular lock grips. And with my size of hands and this gun, I mean, it's absolutely perfect. I wouldn't change anything at all about the grips, besides the way the interface is right there. But like I said, these grips are really made for a shadow. All right, so yeah, overall, I think the first thing you would notice just grabbing this gun is just it's very, very heavy, but it's also balanced really well. And it's heavy with the stock grips as well. It's not just heavy because of the brass, obviously. So that's another thing. All right, so next thing I'll go over is the controls. So this is the tactical variant, which means it has the decocker. I don't believe there's any tactical versions that don't have the decocker. I think those are manual safeties. One other thing that I'll point out here is the reason I initially got the tactical version as opposed to the safety model is when I'm holding it, if the safety is if the safety is right here instead of the decocker, then I have a hard time hitting the slide release. So if I'm doing like a fast magazine change, then I either have to just barely get the tip of the slide release, or I just power stroke it. I basically have it to the back and just rack it back with my other hand. So that's one thing that I did not really like about the normal version of the SP01 with just the manual safety. But for this particular version, I think the decocker is pretty cool, and sometimes I'll just shoot it double action only, just to get a different weight inside the trigger, and practice with it that way. But so yeah, in terms of this particular gun, the decocker is in a great place. The slide release is in a great place as well, and the mag release is also in a good place. So it's easy to get to everything here. For the decocker, I've got to break my grip a little bit, but I wouldn't use the decocker in a situation unless I wasn't having to shoot regardless. So I consider that to be totally fine. But in terms of the slide release and the magazine, those are in perfect spots to where I can get to it without having to break my grip. In terms of both of those, and so if I lock it back, I can easily get to it with my thumb, and it's got these 3 little steps that stick out to where I can easily just get a hold of it. So yeah, in terms of the controls, that's all great. Then I'll move on to the trigger for a little bit. So just safety check it one more time. Nothing in there. All right, so on the trigger, the first little bit of pull here is basically there's no stiffness there at all. It's really easy to pull through that. Then you get to, I'd say it's a fairly well-defined wall, but there's a fair amount of, like a little bit of creep right there. Then you get back to like a true wall, and once you're there, it's a pretty good pull. But I wouldn't say it's very heavy. I'm gonna guess, I don't have a trigger pull gauge, but I would guess it's probably, I don't know, 4 pounds or so, 3.5 to 4 pounds. Then grabbing onto the slide and showing the reset. So bringing the trigger back forward. It's very, very, very tactile. And it makes a loud clicking noise as well, so it's pretty obvious where you're at. So yeah, I think overall the trigger's pretty good, especially for a target. For a gun you could use in a target shooting competition or something like that. This is great. Cajun Gunworks also sells some components that you can drop in yourself or send your gun over to them. And I haven't personally held one of those guns, but I've heard their triggers are phenomenal. So if you wanted to tweak something about this gun, then you can do that as well. All right, so that's it for the trigger. We've also got a rail up on the front, so it's quite a long rail, so you could put whatever flashlight you want on there. And then the last thing I'll go over here is just the sights. So for this particular version, I'll put it on the side a little bit so you can see them. So for this particular version, we've got a fiber optic front sight post and then just 2 white dots on the rear. They're not luminescent or anything like that to where they glow in the dark. But I think overall they work great. I've played around with different colors on the front. I found green to be my favorite, but obviously you can try different things. You can buy packs of those fiber optic beads or whatever you want to call them for around $5 or $6 on eBay. So yeah, I think the sights are great, but there's also additional options to change those out. And if you really wanted to, you could also send the slide off to get milled. So you could attach a red dot on there, but personally I just like shooting iron sights more so than anything. All right, so the last thing here is I'll just go over if I would buy this gun again or not. There's been quite a few deals on Reddit, so if you go to like Reddit gun deals, then you'll see these come up fairly frequently. I think you can buy one for around $600, maybe $500 if you really look for it. But typically the manual safety version comes up on sale a lot more than the decocker variant. But I would say for around $600, it's an absolute steal considering it's got a steel frame. It's nice and heavy. It's not a gun that I would carry every day, but it's like a range toy. It's really difficult to beat personally. So yeah, I think it's a great gun if you can find it for the right price. Thank you for watching, and feel free to ask any questions you have down below. Thanks. Bye.